Hi, I'm Mikkel Plain, and this is The Revenue Formula. In today's episode, we discuss adding enterprise sales as a new motion, why enterprise sales is not just hopping on a jet and flying somewhere, what you'll need in place, and common pitfalls to avoid. We have discussed getting a job because either you can be pale, or when the room is hot like it is now, you can be pretty red in your face.
But isn't that this is on tape now? But,
Yeah.
But isn't there some kind of a Zoom filter that takes all of this makeup thing away?
Yeah, there is. The thing is, post-production is a wonderful thing. You can choose a dramatic filter on the phone, and then a lot of the color gets fixed. But that's probably the best transition we've had so far into an episode.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. So talking about makeup of our CEO. That's. Now we're going to talk about something way more cool. Actually, it's adding a new motion. We've written on LinkedIn, or not, I shouldn't say we. You've written a bit on LinkedIn about all these motions, PLG, going down market, going up market. There are so many things you can do. Today, we want to talk a bit about moving up market. Specifically, how do you go about enterprise sales in a B2B SaaS? First off, everyone dreams of moving up market. It's more revenue and it's just on one customer. Why should a company or B2B SaaS go up market?
Yeah. I think before we go into that shortly, so motion, what does motion mean? This is just, a process or revenue stream or all kinds of different ways to define it. Usually it's connected to a segment. So we say it's the mid-market motion, or it's PLG is a motion, so product-led growth, or in that case, enterprise. Yeah? And why is everyone trying to go up market? The reason is, as you scale, you want to continue maintaining that scale. And that means you need to keep adding more customers, which is difficult as it is. The other way to, on top of that, then keep growing is by basically increasing your average contract value year over year. And you want to do that both with your existing customers, upsell, retention, net dollar retention, and so forth. And you want to do that also with new customers coming throughout the pipeline. And the cool thing about enterprise is you have bigger ticket sizes, great. The other thing is they tend to churn less. They don't leave you, right? So if you are a B2B SaaS and maybe you're struggling with either churn or net dollar retention or net revenue retention, then the desire to go up market might even come from that angle as well, right? Better retention. And really taking those two things in combination in an Excel spreadsheet usually is a great idea. And then you add CEO ambition or sales leader ambition that really want to go for, the elephants, and the whales, and the big logos, and
the fortune.
The first 6-digit deal, the first 7-digit deal, and so forth, right? You add those things to it, and suddenly everyone wants to go up market, which they're doing. And by the way, not in all cases is that a good idea. Yeah. So really being thoughtful about that is also pretty key.
So let's say you as a business really want to go up market. Then is that something any business can do? Because there's going to be so many differences. Some are going to have one ASP, some are going to have another type of product. Are there some criteria before even having that conversation you need to kind of look out for before deciding, okay, we're going to go up market?
Yes. I think it's very comparable to something like product market fit. That's really what this is about. And you might have reached product market fit in a different segment, throughout a different channel, for a different sales price, and so forth. Again, there's like a framework, around it. Brian Balfour, I think it's not his four forces, it's something else, but he's been talking about that a little bit. But there's all of these things need to fit, right? And finding that fit, pretty difficult. Product market, it's called product market fit. And if you want to start selling to a different segment, that framework that you used and that made you successful, you can pretty much throw this out the window in many cases.
Yeah.
So why is that? Number one, your enterprise buyers will want to have a different product. And, maybe the problem that they're solving, it works for SMB, it works for mid-market, it works for enterprise. But suddenly now you have probably lots more users maybe.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have then requirements to manage those users and the governance on top of that. Suddenly you will have much more reporting requests and how that works. You will have more audit trail requests. You will have more information security requests. You will have all kinds of stuff that, piles on top, where an enterprise simply is like, hey, this is, we can't live without that. I'm sorry. You need to build all of these things. Otherwise I can't use it. And before you try and sell to enterprises, you should try and figure out, what those things are and where they are in your product roadmap. Just building a commercial function that is trying to push something that's not a product market fit for that segment, that will usually end up being pretty expensive actually. And then the other thing is, the way the buying process works for an enterprise might be fundamentally different from how it worked for your mid-market or SMB company. And you need to figure out how you're gonna deal with that. Sure, there might even be other competitors sitting there. Suddenly the way you sell needs to be completely different, and maybe there's just no opening, right? You need to kind of figure out what is our way in besides just ambition. I think that's pretty important to keep in mind, right? So really, both does my product fit, but also does the way I try and sell and deliver my product, does it actually fit for that segment?
Yeah, totally. I mean, so from the marketing perspective, I can say there's even a difference to a degree there, because you do need to convey the solution, right? And it's a different solution for that segment if you're moving up market compared to mid market. It's not that you need to change how you communicate, because at the end of the day, in an enterprise, it's human beings, right? So you don't need to change the language or the wording or the design. But there are other elements you need to start highlighting for that audience.
Yes, 100%. So kind of moving into almost the how, right? How do you, let's just say you had a couple of interviews with potential enterprise buyers.
Yeah.
And interviews here is really not sales conversations, but almost like product manager interviews and trying to figure out what they need, what they don't need, and so forth. Maybe you feel well equipped. Maybe stuff is already happening in your roadmap. Maybe you have that ISO certificate already. Kind of all of these things. Maybe you check. So how then do you go about selling to these bigger guys? What do you need to change? What do you need to change in your go to market? And number one, really important piece here: don't change the stuff that's already working for the SMB and the mid market. You need to think about it in a way where you almost create a other team in your go-to-market motion, which will be difficult. I think it will be challenging. And thinking throughout the full funnel on the marketing side, number one, some of your messaging probably might need to be tweaked or changed. That is difficult. So how do you keep it important and relevant also for the SMBs and mid-market? How do you not alienate these other guys? Difficult question. A little bit more easier potentially is, you probably want to talk to some of those analysts, Gartner, Forrester, what have you, to get into their wave and quadrant and whatever they have. Us early stage folks, we make a lot of fun of analyst relations, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
It totally is still a thing. Especially in those enterprises, people buy those reports, read them, and really the way they're reading this is, if it goes wrong, I can't get fired for this. Because if Forrester said these guys are in the top 3, then they must be reliable, right? So that's a thing that you as a marketing department probably need to think about. It's not just G2 and
get some more reviews.
Capterra, It's no. It's a different game, right? And by the way, if you have gone through one of those analyst kind of review sessions, it's very different. You probably want to have a consultant hired just to kind of help you through that, right? Next step is, okay, cool. Some of that is maybe, And maybe you want to add all of that stuff of going to conferences and so forth and yada yada. But let's just say you kind of are at the point now where you're on the map for enterprise customers. What's going to happen next is they're not just going to inbound and jump on a demo. It totally might happen, but really in reality, what's probably going to happen is they're going to send you a request for proposal, an RFP.
I've done a few of those.
Request for quote, RFQ, request for information, RFI. I don't have a clue how they differentiate, by the way. There's someone that could probably explain what the difference is, but at the end of the day, it's usually a really long Excel spreadsheet with questions, and long story short, you're not allowed to say no. Long story short, that's really what it is. And obviously, sometimes you probably will need to say no, and then you need to kind of just figure out how you kind of go about it. And I think the key insight here is and this is true for surprisingly many enterprises, if you weren't part of formulating that RFP with that enterprise, you're probably not going to get chosen. Usually they build this together with, the chosen party already, then corporate rules, make them do this RFP. And, then they end up doing this RFP. And then, when they end up the scores, like, see there, this one vendor that, helped them to create it comes out on top. So let's just say you get post the RFP process and you get actually invited. Sure, Corona changed a bunch of things, but they do expect you to show up.
Yeah.
They do expect you to show up, and they do expect you to have a deck with their logo on it, and it needs to be tailored and so forth. And, that will require you to jump on jets, which is probably lesser so the issue, but it also requires the sales reps to be just a bit more mature, honestly, right? Kind of sending a 20-something to IBM or Axon or, what have you. It just probably will not fully work out for you or in your favor. But it also means that suddenly the sales organization needs a completely different set of support happening around them, right? Creating those decks, getting to that place and so forth. It suddenly is a completely different engine and machine you're building there. And then, going throughout the next step, you kind of, just because I mentioned engine, thinking not only about the inbound route, but also about the outbound route. Let's just say you have an enterprise SDR, and it should be an enterprise SDR. Really thinking about it here now is in the mid-market, and maybe it worked great for you. It's 10, 12 opportunities a month, and, a massive book of business and calling a bunch of people. That strategy won't work for enterprise. So reason number one, your book of business just isn't infinite. It's fairly finite.
Yeah.
If you're talking to, plus 5K, plus 10K companies. The next thing is most of those massive organizations, they're not just in one location. They're probably, I'm not sure if they're global, but they're definitely international, which then also means you probably have multiple points of entry, which means you call someone up in Germany and they say no. It doesn't mean that you throw away the account. It means you call up Austria or you call up the US or the UK and so forth. And then the next step, once it's working out with your sales rep, you as an SDR shouldn't actually even stop working that account. You should, it's usually one entry point will not have enough momentum in the organization to push a whole deal through. Usually those folks want to make sure, again, that they can trust you, but also that they don't get fired. So they don't want to be the only one in the end saying that you are great. But they also maybe don't even know how to sell this internally. So if you help them and add more champions to the table throughout different offices and locations, and all of them are suddenly building the case for you, you're going to make it much, much easier.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think we've had two steps so far, right? It's really a different team taking care of this motion, right? Moving up market. And then it's not just going to be inbound as the second, right? And you said something really interesting, which is if you're receiving the RFP, you're probably not going to win it. You need to be part of creating it, right? How do you get chosen? Like, let's maybe talk about that for a second, because, it's going to dictate all the steps to follow. If you can't nail that part, then, how do you see that? How do we ensure that if we want to move up market, that, we're being asked, hey, should we do an RFP, right?
I think you need to be seen as the trusted party and you need to get in contact with that person that's going to end up writing this RFP, over time. And sometimes they have a vendor already, and then that's a change process, and you need to know who's going to end up making that decision, which then will also help you to figure out who's going to end up writing that RFP. Or if you're like, if you're basically creating software that is new as a category, you will still need to figure out, and some people call it, who's the CEO of that problem.
Yeah.
And you will need to find that person, and you will need to build a relationship with that person. And that person needs to get to the point of like, actually, we need this now. And then they go internally and, okay, how do we buy software for this? We need to write this RFP. And they come back to you and are like, hey, I need to do all of those 20 steps here. It's pretty painful. And one of them is an RFP. Can you help me with that? Right? That is kind of usually the process. And probably now that I say it, officially on tape, there's probably some bribery, something kind of, you should totally not be doing this, by the way. But reality is a lot of people that just simply want to buy a piece of software in those big corporate organizations, they see it almost as a chore, and then they kind of need to go through this process. And if they can get help from you, great.
Yeah. It makes that job a whole lot easier.
Yeah,
right?
and part of that process, by the way, and this is where you get caught if you're not helping out.
Yeah.
It says, hey, you need to receive offers from at least 3 competitive vendors.
Yeah.
And usually, if you're not talking to them, you're just one of the other 2 that's spitting in. But it's not really being part of the consideration here.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, the whole being a trusted party in itself is a huge topic. We're not going to be able to dive deep into that one, right? I think you dropped some of the nuggets already around, hey, it's analyst relations, it's actually meeting in person, right? Okay, so let's say you're at the point where then you get chosen, right, and get to be in part of that process. Yes. What is the next step from there?
I mean, I'm not sure if I can kind of talk deeply about the sales process and stuff, but generally speaking, and this is also, one of the watch outs here, this process of selling to an enterprise will probably take 9, 12, 15 months, something like that. Yeah, you need to be aware of that. That needs to be part of your Excel spreadsheet. That, sure, you do the analyst report and then you have inbounds tomorrow, maybe yes, but those still won't close the day after. It will take a pretty long time, and it will be much, much longer than whatever you're doing in the mid-market and the SMB, like for sure, right? But I think then the other piece is, hey, you sign someone, high five. Number one, those signatures usually come pretty costly because they will probably squeeze in some kind of a product request in there. And because it's a nice logo and because it's a lot of money, completely irrational, obviously, I've been there myself and I still said yes, they will ask for some additional pieces of product to be built. And you as an organization just need to figure out if you want to do that. If you come out of the SMB and mid-market, you probably haven't dealt with something like that before. So that will be hurtful, and probably your product organization is going to be all upset and everything. So I think this is kind of a definite watch out. And usually in a customer life cycle, having that expectation going in is usually also a really great way to start the relationship off really, really shitty. Because obviously product is not going to deliver on time. Obviously the customer will change his or her mind 5 times in between, and will want to have something very different from what was kind of written down. And in the end, that basically means, basically you're behind in the expectation management at that point, right? And while the marketing organization need to be different, the outbound organization need to be different, the sales organization need to be different, also the customer success organization needs to be different. You're not dealing with one decision maker and 5 users anymore. Suddenly you're basically dealing with a decision maker that has nothing to do with your product whatsoever, and you basically are needing to roll out to hundreds of different peoples in different time zones in different countries. And really, you as a customer success organization need to level match on the titles and so forth, but also you almost need the CS person, running the deal basically ends up becoming a project manager more than a individual contributor in that sense, because it's really, you need to activate all the different people that need to be part of that process, and you need to orchestrate it, and you need to kind of check in with the other side and make sure all of this is working out. And that is simply a completely different skill set from the, in many cases, point and click onboarding and, hey, how do you feel about this approach of CS organizations in the SMB and mid-market? And so, I mean, that is, now we're at the end of that commercial story here, but, just saying out loud, it's a lot of different things that need to be different for you to be successful in that segment.
Yeah, I think this is one of those where it's not just a sales thing that they do for themselves. It's a strategic decision on a company level that impacts the entire org. You can't just fit them in. You can't fit an enterprise business into the business process you have today.
Yes.
It's not going to work out. And in the same turn, you're going to have departments such as product and marketing that has a really big stake in actually making it succeed, because they need to be able to dedicate resources to build account-based marketing, to service with pitches, to help with RFPs, to build out additional features for, whether it's security or audit trails or specific requests they have, right?
And how do you do that without cannibalizing the stuff that's going well in your business already?
Exactly.
Right? And again, it's, you can, behind closed doors, you can say like, well, those are just some resources that now they're doing something different. And I think that's true to a certain degree. You can just build another part of the organization that is now enterprise sales or enterprise marketing or whatever. Where I think it's extremely challenging, though, is on the, just say on the website. How do you on the website use messaging that really, really works for you, but it's inclusive for all the different segments? And do you want to have pricing on the website, or do you not? Do you have a free trial? Do you not?
Yep.
I mean, all of these things, you can maybe figure out your way around on the inside of the business.
Yep.
And even there, it's really difficult, by the way. But figuring this out on the outside of the business, meaning kind of the website and everything that's, prospect facing, really difficult. Really difficult.
Yeah, and we've talked about it internally, message market fit, right? And that's going to change when you add a different segment. Doesn't actually matter whether it's enterprise. You could go for agencies or even a different market, like a country, right? The thing is, fundamentally, there might be the same issue they're dealing with, but it's going to be at a different scale when we're talking enterprise. Or maybe an issue SMBs have is just not prevailing in an enterprise environment because they have more resources. So maybe there's people taking care of whatever issue it is.
Yeah.
And that's where actually spending time getting to understand that segment deeply and then conducting proper message testing is key. This is not just an exercise of doing, now we have another industry page on our website and then problem solved. That's not actually going to cut it.
No, and how other people are doing it. And then, usually the big names are being mentioned, like Salesforce, Slack, Jira, all of these guys. And really what they are doing is, if you consider Salesforce, for example, which is usually the worst example to pick in all cases, but let's just say Salesforce for a second, they started out in the SMB. They were an SMB vendor starting out. A very classic thing in the CRM market, by the way. It's all the new entrants come in the SMB and then they grow up and try and kick out Oracle and SAP and so forth. And really, Salesforce, again, started as SMB and then grew up to mid-market and now enterprise, right? What happened? They basically, stopped having all three motions, if you will, or all three segments. They're really only enterprise. And that probably has to do with, sure, the unit economics